after the pandemic and with the advent of people working remotely being much more accepted, and in fact, what I find is welcomed often. I think this opportunity of working as a consultant has become more and more compelling. Yet, from my personal experience, I don't have a lot of a clearer understanding of what that entails. How do you get a consultant job? How do you, all the different nuances of being a consultant for those of us who have been in full-time employment before. It seems daunting. It doesn't seem like a viable alternative, even though it is an extremely viable and sometimes very attractive alternative. So David has tons of experience in that area, and he will provide us with some facts and ideas and strategies for how we can become consultants and be successful in a somewhat different career path, but one I feel is extremely relevant today. So with that, David, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Joyce and Jerry and Shri. Thank you for the invitation to come participate with you here at this group. And always a pleasure to meet different FENG groups and have the opportunity to present. And let us get into this. And by the way, for any of you, if you have a question, just ask your question. We're a small enough group. It won't be disruptive. You could use chat. You could just quickly unmute if you want. A couple of times we'll have for intermission for questions. If you're holding them, it's your choice. So, but we will get ourselves started. And just as we get started, I want to let you know there are a couple of program caveats, or really just one. I am not an attorney. I'm not an insurance specialist. I'm not a tax professional. And I just want you to make sure that you understand that this presentation, I'm a friend talking to a friend. And that's really all this program is about. I created this program a few years ago. I was in another job seeker support group, a smaller group. We met as a group of about 10 to 12 people. And each week, one of us ran or led a topic discussion. Actually, there's every other week that we met. And I had already started my business. I've been 30 years in corporate IT, already started my business. And people were just curious about what I had to do to start my own consulting company. And so this was a genesis of an evolution of my path and the steps that I took. And now it's my opportunity to share that with all of you. And so, as Shri had mentioned, I do have my own technology consulting company, Princeton Technology Advisors. We do tech support and training, website support, project management, technology implementation. For me, my clients tend to be small businesses and not-for-profit organizations that typically don't have an IT department or IT resource of their own, and they call me when they need. So I don't tend to get on long full-time contracts. I tend to be on these short kind of gigs to help out my clients. And as Shri mentioned, I'm active in the job seeker support community, leading or participating with several organizations. And that's just been a passion, pay it forward or pay it back. And so that's why I enjoy doing that and what has brought me here. So, yep, well, let's get into that right away. And we'll talk about first, so what is the gig economy? And essentially, as Shri was mentioning, companies are now tending to hire or contract with independent consultants or part-time or temporary workers for a specific project. And then that's what that gig is, that specific project. And then we as gig workers, we are those consultants. We are those or contract firm employees if we're working for another company. We are those part-time or short-term workers that get assigned to that temporary flexible project that's going on. And so that's that gig economy. Companies tend to be doing it more and more rather than hiring a full-time staff because it's ultimately more cost-effective for them to do so. And so therefore, for a lot of us, it's going to be the future of work. This is the way a lot of us are going to work in the future. And so it's not hard to become a consultant, but this just sheds some light on how to declare yourself as a consultant and position yourself to be effective to work in this gig economy. And as a consultant, and we can use the word contractor or consultant interchangeably, but as a consultant, you're really someone who provides some sort of service or skills or advice to somebody professionally. You get paid for it. And that's what you are. Nothing more complex than that. You're working usually under a fixed contract, a fixed term, and that could be a fixed time frame or for a set amount of money. And it's usually for a specific project. Sometimes consultants are hired as the replacement of full-time staff to do lots of things, but more and more often it's this gig oriented. So basically you're called in to be a hitman. Now in New Jersey, where I'm from, these are the most famous hitmen that there are. Of course, being from Chicago, you have other hitmen in your history. But these are the ones that are near and dear to me, the Sopranos. You go in, you do the job, and you get out. And so just think of it kind of like that. Now, there are really two types of consulting, or two different ways you can be paid as a consultant. The first one is you're an employee. And at the end of the year, you get that W-2. So you are a full-time employee with a company that has hired you. It could be the company that needs the project. They actually bring you on a W-2 basis. Or what could happen is you're hired by one of those big consulting companies, well, big or small consulting company, who they have the client and they put you on the project as the person working. In that case, you're an employee and you're getting your taxes taken out and so forth. At the end of the year, you get a W-2. And the other is the independent contractor, where you're not necessarily working for somebody else, working for yourself. And instead of getting paid on a W-2 basis, you get paid on what's called a 1099. We'll be talking about this a little bit more in just a couple of minutes. And so those are the two different types. This program is mostly going to talk about the independent contractor perspective. And the reason why I'm focusing on that is because a lot of people understand what it's like to be employed, paid a paycheck every week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, and getting a W-2 at the end of the year. It's a process a lot of us are familiar with, but not as much with the independent. So that's why we're going to talk more about that. Your questions can be on either, and I'll be happy to answer anything I'm able to. So let's kind of contrast an employee versus being a consultant. Now, typically an employee, when they're employed, they receive benefits in addition to their salary. The typical benefits might be healthcare, dental, vision. So there are others that sometimes come along as well, like matched retirement planning or gym memberships or things like that. But typically that's part of your compensation. But when you're an independent consultant, you typically don't get paid benefits. So you have to realize that if there are any of those things that you need, you have to manage that or take care of it on your own. And we'll be talking more about that in a few minutes as well. A lot of us don't realize, but the employer pays half of our federal taxes, not the income tax, but the employment taxes. You may look at your paycheck and see FICA or Medicare and Social Security. So as an employee, a W-2 employee, your employer as a benefit typically pays half. You as an independent, you have to pay the full 15.3%. Right? So just realize that, what's that, 7.65% is on you. We'll be talking later more about how you charge and what rate and all that, which has to be considering this as well. At the end of the year, your company sends you a W-2 for tax time, and you're paid periodically by paycheck. And you don't have to ask for it. You don't have to submit an invoice. They just give it to you, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. But as a consultant, there might be different ways that you submit to get paid. You might even need to send an invoice. Or maybe it's agreed in the contract that you're just going to be sent a fixed amount each term, and that's fine. But at the end of the year, instead of a W-2, they will send you a 1099. There's different 1099s, a 1099 NEC, non-employed consultants, I believe, or non-employee. Typically, as an employee, from your paycheck, your company takes out your payroll taxes, your income taxes, so that kind of administration is taken care of for you. As a consultant, the taxes are not taken out. So if at the end of the week, you're going to bill them $2,000, you get all $2,000, no taxes taken out. And you are required then to submit income taxes quarterly. In Illinois, you pay a state income tax as well as a federal income tax. As an employee, there are really limited tax deductions that you have as an employed entity. Used to be a lot more that there were tax deductions that we could take. As our tax laws changed over the years, a lot of that was taken away. So for instance, most of your expenses related to your job are not tax deductible. They should be covered by your employer. Contrasting that as an independent employee, you have a lot more tax deductions that are available. Now, you will need to speak with your own accountant or tax professional about that. But as an example, I'm sitting here talking to you. I've got a desktop computer. I've got a monitor. I've got the camera. My printer is over here. As I've acquired them, the expense was a deduction against my income. It's a legitimate tax deduction. I do take a home office expense. I do keep track of that as well. So a small percentage of my heating and cooling and electric and all that kind of stuff is a tax deduction as well. Typically, as an employee, you do not have a home office expense, even if you are working from home and not in the office. And a lot of your office supplies are not deductions either. Your company provides those. You do, again, we'll need to speak with your own accountant to see what's appropriate and legal for you. So those are some of the difference. Now, what might be in this for the client? Why would they want to hire a consultant or bring you on board as a consultant instead of bringing on employees? Well, for one thing, as consultants, we're easier to hire and fire. They don't typically need to go through HR for consulting. They don't need to go through the legal department, except maybe to review whatever contract is in place. But when the contract is up, they let you go. Or they may say, we're ending the project, you're gone. There's no sort of offboarding process that's required to go through HR or legal as you would with employed staff. There tends not to be a real long-term commitment. Now, certainly you can have long-term period or time period contracts, but employment tends to be open-ended, where contracts tend to have a fixed term. So employers know what their cost is going to be and what time is going to be allowed for you to be on the contract. Now, they technically, they get a better or a more objective and seasoned team member, because the mindset of hiring managers for bringing on consultants is different than the mindset for bringing on employed staff. And in thinking about when I was an IT manager and hired people, I had this very mindset, which was, for a consultant, I need you as a hitman to come in. I need your expertise to do the job. And when you're done, we're letting you go. Maybe you'll even train some of our employees. When I hire an employee, I think about, can I work with this person 8 hours a day, week after week? So there's a different sort of connection. And I'll be willing to teach you some of the job related stuff if I really get a better personal type employee here. But as a consultant, I'm really looking for the skills. So they're looking for that. And they're often looking to get immediate skills the employed team doesn't have, where what they would need to consider doing for an employee is possibly training them. So it's another benefit for the client. And long-term, it does save them money. We'll talk about rates in a little while. Hourly rate probably is going to be higher as a consultant, but in the end, they're not paying for benefits, your training, your personal time off, any of that kind of stuff. And it's in the budget. They know exactly what they're going to pay you over the life of the project. And then when the project is over, they terminate the relationship. So it is ultimately a cost saver for a client. So that's one of the reasons, or these are some of the reasons why it's beneficial to the client. So in addition to what's beneficial to the client, what's in it for you? Why might you consider working as a consultant rather than an employee? Well, for one thing, if you've been unemployed for a while, this mitigates unemployment bias. It fills a gap on your resume. You may get a fairly short-term contract, 3 months, 6 months. And so rather than having this long unemployment period, you can show that you have been working. Sadly, hiring managers do have an unemployment bias. If there are two equal candidates and one is working and is going to shift to their company, but the other has been unemployed for a period of time, they know statistically the hiring company will hire the employed person. Doesn't always make sense. If it's 50-50, they're equal, but that's what they do. Having worked, even as a consultant, fills that gap. You know, you usually paid more because you do have certain administrative costs. They realize that the start and stop times that are built in. And so your rate on an hourly basis tends to be much higher as compared to an employee. So that may be beneficial to you to have these consulting projects, especially if the income is important to you. On LinkedIn, you will have a 100% complete profile as long as you have a current position. A current position on LinkedIn does not have an end date. So if the date of the position was January 2022 to present, that's a current position. But if your last job ended 3 months ago and you don't have a current position, you actually don't have what LinkedIn considers a 100% complete profile. And so when they search for people like you, not when they search for you directly, but people like you, you're likely not to come up in the top of the list because you don't have a 100% complete profile. LinkedIn brings the 100% complete profiles above those that are not. So put yourself down as a consultant with an open end date, and you'll have a 100% complete profile. You also have the opportunity to have a greater variety of experience on your resume. A lot of times what happens, there are certain companies, certain industries that only hire employees from within the industry. They really have a desire to keep that expertise or get that expertise. But as a consultant, there's a little bit different mindset. They need the job skills. They need the technical experience. They need something very specific, and they pay less attention to the industry. Not that they ignore it, they just pay a little less attention. So pharmaceutical is one that's notorious for hiring people within the industry. But if they need somebody with your specific skill outside of the industry, they may bring you on, maybe like in an accounting department or an IT department where industry experience may be a little less relevant. Now you've got experience in that industry, which could make you valuable as you look to transition in that industry. So that variety can be terrific. Also, a lot of companies are more willing to put on contract or on as a consultant older staff while they look to hire younger staff. Now, age discrimination is illegal, so they can't legally make a differentiator of age between a young and old person when they hire someone. It's hard to prove. We know it's there, it exists. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the federal law, they can't discriminate against people older than 40 years old, but sometimes it happens. Companies need your savvy. They need your expertise. They need your skills if you're over 40, and they may offer you a contract instead of employment. Be open to that. Then the other thing is, some people will tell me, and I've heard this lots of times, I'm only interested in being a consultant if it's a contract to hire position because I want to be a full-time employee. But you don't know if it's a contract to hire position. They don't know, the company doesn't know if it's a contract to hire position until you're there. They love you, they need you, they got to have you, they offer you the position. So in order to be a contract to hire or eligible for a contract to hire, you have to be on a contract. And I can tell you that happened with me when I was a hiring manager. We had a project, I hired 2 people on contract, I brought in 2 consultants. The contract or the project took 13 months. When it was over, I went to my boss, the CIO, and I said, we got to have Ray. I said, the other guy was Dave. I said, he's a good guy too, if we can bring him in. But Ray was spectacular. And we wound up hiring Ray off the contract. It was never meant to be a contract to hire, but he just really proved his value. So we hired him as a contract to hire.
Hey, David, it's Stacy. Can I ask a question there about that?
Absolutely.
So when you say only available if on a contract, I mean, wouldn't you always have a contract?
What I mean is the
okay.
opportunity to be hired off the contract is only available if you're currently on a contract. So therefore, if you say, I'm not going to be a contractor unless I know I'm going to be hired. And what I'm suggesting is get on the contract if you get a good contract, because it may turn into an employment opportunity.
Okay. I was going to say, I think you would always have a contract of some sort in place.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in a if you're a contractor, you should have a quote unquote contract in place. That defines the terms, the length, the project they'll be on, the rate, that kind of stuff. So yeah, you'll always have a contract. But what this references is the opportunity of contract to hire is only available if you're a contract employee.
Okay,
So,
got it.
or
Thank you.
yeah, maybe I should wordsmith this, only available if a contractor or if a consultant.
Right.
But it's funny because people have told me I would only consider a contract to hire, but it's very rarely disclosed. Or you don't always know that that's the case. So be open-minded.
Hey, David, another question. You initially provided the two kinds of consultant that one can be, and the second type is what we are discussing.
Mostly.
Now, I've seen these companies called like Paro, I don't know how you say it, Paro.ai and Deal, and there are all these companies that apparently they sift and search and find top tier talent for companies. If one were to become a contractor with them, is it still on 1099, or do they actually provide benefits? Do they have you on the bench and provide benefits?
So if a large contracting company brings you on board, they can do either. And what they'll do is sometimes give you the choice. So that's up to you. They'll typically pay you a few dollars more an hour on a 1099 than they will on a W-2. But even if it's a W-2, there's no guarantee that they'll give you benefits. They may say, well, benefits don't kick in until you're here for 6 months, because they know a lot of their contracts are not long-term. So why pay the benefits?
Got it.
Each one's a little different. We're used to benefits, of course, when we're employed by a company that we're doing the work for, and that's just part of the compensation. But the consulting companies don't always do that. What they may do also is they may say, well, we don't pay for benefits, but you have the opportunity to buy healthcare and dental at our group rate, and that may be cost effective as well. Now, we're going to talk more about insurance a little later. Okay. Good, thank you. So we will move on. So we kind of talked about what's in it for you, what's in it for them. Maybe you're not really convinced that you should be a consultant. So I'm kind of being devil's advocate right now. Why should I not be a consultant? Why to not be a consultant? This is why I should not be a consultant. You may not be treated as well as the other employees. That's a concern for some people. I don't want to be treated poorly by someplace. Well, that could happen. I could tell you from 2 of my employment experiences, I wasn't treated well. I wasn't being an employee. That can happen, but you may actually be treated better. You'll get a kick out of this. I was actually on a 3-day contract in suburban Chicago. A little bit west of the city is Rock Ridge. You probably know that town that's over there. Or Woodridge. And a company out there brought me on for a financial technical project. I needed to kind of clean up some stuff. They flew me out, put me up in the hotel, all that kind of stuff. When I got to the office, they put me in a very nice office right next to the IT director. So I had a very nice office. I was actually treated very well. The IT director welcomed me, said, here's the names of the people in the finance department you'll speak with. Please go make your own appointments. And I walked over. And the first person I spoke with, nice enough woman, began to bitch at me that I had a better office than her, and I'm a consultant, and she's had her eye on that office for weeks. Nothing to do with people in suburban Chicago, just I guess she had a bone to pick with her employer. So I was treated quite well. So I was treated twice, not well as an employee, but very well this time as a consultant. So don't think that you won't be treated well as the employees. You might not be invited to holiday parties and other things. It's just the way those companies are going to operate. I might be unhappy there. I might be unhappy as a consultant. That could happen. Like I just explained, I was unhappy with 2 of my jobs. You'll move on. And the joke's on them because they paid you. So do your good work, be proud of what you do. And if you need to, you'll move on. There are some unpaid administrative tasks. You may have to put together extra timesheets. and do other things to get paid, and you're not quote unquote being paid for that. Well, you'll get larger hourly rates. So your rates will cover some of the extra things you may need to do, your own invoicing or other things like that. But I need benefits. And it's kind of funny. And like I mentioned before, I've talked to people who won't be a consultant if they can't be a full-time employee. They'll also tell me sometimes, I'm not going to be a consultant if I'm not getting benefits. So I usually ask them, well, what do you do now for benefits? And they say, oh, it's horrible. I have to buy benefits. I need benefits. You can buy benefits with the money that you make on your contract. You're getting the larger hourly rates. You're getting the larger hourly rates to pay for some of the things that are not being offered to you as a benefit. And so now you don't have to take the money out of your pocket or out of your bank account to pay for those things. So take the contract. But you know, it may only be short term. I really need long-term employment. And I get that because we certainly have a long working career. But you know what? If you were on a 6-month contract at $75 an hour, you'll earn about $75,000. Annualized, there's $150,000. So just put it in perspective. You may do pretty well on a consulting, even if there's a gap of a few months between projects. So do keep that in mind. You may do very well. So don't look at some of the negative reasons about why to not be a consultant. Be a bit more open-minded about how to be effective as a consultant for yourself and your career. So there is our first intermission. I know there were already a couple of questions. Anything else so far, or maybe on what we covered?
David, if you're a consultant, you're not tied to the 40-hour work week. So, right? Is that so? If you work more than 40 hours, you're not getting overtime.
So I spent most of my career, 30 years, as an employee, always in IT, and I didn't get overtime either. I worked lots of overtime. There was no 40-hour week, back office as an IT person. As a consultant, it depends. If your contract is purely hourly, then it's perfectly fine to be able to bill for that time. I was on one contract where if I was going over 40 hours, I needed permission from the manager. And just so he would approve it. But I didn't bill time and a half. It was still the same hourly rate. Some people will negotiate a daily contract or a weekly contract. So if you paid, just making up numbers, $2,000 a week. Well, if you're putting in 80 hours, maybe you should have billed more than 80 hours a week. I mean, 2,000 a week. But that's the way the company manages their expense as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
Yep.
David,
yeah.
How do you juggle the? That's what I find anyway. When I have a consulting assignment, everything is rosy, right? But I'm not marketing at that time. So how do you juggle, or how do you, maybe you're going to get to this later, that interval when you are pulling revenue, but you're not marketing, so no one knows that you're out there.
Yep. So the best analogy I can make is there was likely a time in your career before you considered being a consultant where you knew the company or the job you were working with, you didn't want to be there much longer. You started job hunting. And the process is going to be kind of the same. If you're going to need the next gig to come, a next assignment to come sooner rather than later, then just like you were job hunting while you were employed at the current company you were hoping to leave, you'll job hunt again with knowing that the contract is going to end in several weeks and start that process. Yeah, you'll have to do it like that. Yep. Oh, good questions. Small group, but lively. Thank you. Anything else, or should we move on? Okay, so we'll move on. Plenty of time for questions later as well. So some of you may remember, well, a lot of shows have intermissions. I don't know, movies have intermissions. Oh, so we're talking about hitmen. Godfather 2 had an intermission. They were hitmen on that one. Do I need my own company? So no, not typically. You don't have to have your own company to be a consultant. You can work for someone else, or you can have a company. But what if the client requires that I work through a company? This is more and more common, that when a client engages with you, that there's a legal entity between the actual person doing the work and the company that's bringing them on board. And the reason why is employment law has gotten more favorable, well, I guess for states, for protecting employees. And so they want to make sure, and I don't know this specifically in Illinois, New Jersey has gotten very employee supportive. They want to make sure that income taxes are properly withheld, that people are being protected properly, that they get the benefits they're entitled to, all that kind of stuff. Companies don't want to get sued later on. So by having a corporation between the end consultant and the end person hiring means, well, it's very clear that person's not an employee because we hired the company. They just happen to put this person on the contract. So what if they require that you work through a company? You have a couple of options. One is find a colleague or a friend who has their own company, and maybe they can do you a favor. Can you hire me or bring me on as a 1099 consultant? And then you, friend company, engage with my client that I found. So they could be the intermediary for you. So your client, the ABC company you're looking to work for, signs a contract with your friend's company and will put you on the contract. So that's one way to do it. There's a company that's there. If you don't know someone or someone's unwilling to do that, you can find a consulting company, a company that does hire consultants. Call them up and say, hey, I've got a gig, will you hire me? And see if they will. Good chance they'll be open to talking to you about that, because for them, it's free money. They did no work at all to get this contract. And they're also hoping that your client will ultimately be a customer of theirs later on. Do be aware that consulting companies usually take a big percentage of the hourly wage. So be very involved in that process. And so if they insist on taking 40, 50% or more, you can have a little bit of leverage, because you could say, look, you put no time and effort into finding this company. Drop your percentage. They're entitled to take something. They certainly have costs for hiring you, and they're going to want to make a little money for the effort. But work that out with them. And in accordance, you may need to adjust your hourly wage accordingly as well. There's this, I like this option. I don't like the other two options a whole lot. Well, the first one's okay, but working with another company, not as much. Look for these things called split placement company. These are professional employers. They typically don't go out looking for business. They don't look for companies to place consultants. What they typically, or what they often have as a service is, if you need to be hired by someone, come to us. And so they tend to take a smaller percentage as compared to the consulting company. When I was an IT manager, Top Echelon was one company that I worked with, where if we brought on a consultant, and they did not have a company, which we did require, we said, let's introduce you to Top Echelon. Now, by the way, you can download this slide deck a little later. I'll tell you where. These blue links, they are live links. So you can click on them. You can see it's popping up right there. So any of the links you see in this presentation are all live, and you can click on them when you download this later. I'll tell you later where to find it. NPA Worldwide, another company that does this. They have other divisions as well that do recruiting and that kind of thing, but Top Echelon, NPA Worldwide do this split placement. Or you can form your own LLC, limited liability company, or your own corp. It could take 2 or 3 weeks or more to do that. And we're going to talk more about this in just a moment. And when you do form your own company, get what's called an EIN, an employer identification number. It's a 9-digit number that's like a social security number, but it's for the business. So you'll get one of those as well. When you contract with your new client, you will not give them your social security number. You'll give them your EIN. And when they send you the 1099, they will put the EIN on that as well. Again, keeping that corporate separation. Now, there are many forms of business entities, well, throughout the country. they're managed or legislated mostly by the states. Now, I did not review everything that's available in Illinois, but we'll talk about these anyway. And do note, as it says at the bottom, we're going to have a very oversimplified discussion of really a complex set of laws in Illinois. And so you will want to talk to your own business law attorney or tax professional to see what makes the most sense for you. But the very first one is called the sole proprietor. It's basically just saying, I'm a consultant. You don't have a legal business entity that you formed. There's no corporation or business that's there. Again, you don't have to have a company to be a consultant. You just hang a shingle and say, I'm a consultant. There's no organization documents. There's nothing to show or prove that you are a company. Liability, basically, if you break anything at the company, or if according to or as a part of your work, you do something that caused some sort of financial loss, and the company wants to be made whole, they're going to sue you. We're going to talk more about errors and omissions insurance later. And your level of liability is technically unlimited without any kind of insurance. They can take your house, your car, your dog, everything. Your income goes on your personal income tax on what's called Schedule C, which is used for miscellaneous income and expenses. So no official documentation, no registration with the state. You just call yourself a consultant. The next level is a limited liability corporation. Now, there are lots of different LL type organizations. See what makes the most sense for you. LLC is available in all 50 states. It is a legal entity in the state. You do get a certification that you are formed. The state will recognize you. Your tax also passes through onto your personal income tax, so you don't file a corporate tax return. And your liability is limited. Now, your liability is not really limited because in the United States, everybody gets sued. But the way it was explained to me is this. The liability to the company is limited, but the employer or the contracted firm that brought you on board, if the staff created some sort of, maybe you did a reporting error that caused them some, cost them something and they want to be made whole, they're going to sue the company and they're going to sue the person doing the work. As an independent, you're both. You're both the company, the LLC, and you're both the person who does the work. So your liability can functionally become unlimited without insurance. So just be aware. We're going to talk more about insurance later. Okay, but you are a legal entity in your state. And then there's something called a C Corp, and there's different versions of corps. And so we're not going into all of those, but that's basically the type where the name of your company, instead of having LLC at the end, will have INC at the end, Inc. or Incorporated. You have articles of incorporation and bylaws. That's the equivalent of the certificate of formation. Your liability, similar to an LLC, is limited. So it's limited to the company. It's also then passes through to the staff that you put on. There is something called double taxation because your company is taxed, does file an income tax return, then pays you a salary, and you are paying income tax on your salary. Now, is it truly double taxation? Well, your income is a deduction against any expenses that the corporation has. So it may not be a true double taxation, but again, you'll talk to a tax professional. But these are different types of business entities. The LLC, the corp, and the different variations of those are registered in the state of Illinois. Now, typically, if you wanted to say, is there a tax advantage to registering in Delaware or Nevada or a tax-friendly state? As an LLC, no, it may not be that way. And the reason why is your income passes through on your personal income tax in Illinois. But as a corporation, it may pay to organize the corp in a tax-friendly state and then pay you in your home state. So that may work out. Again, you'll have to talk to tax professionals about that. So I know this could be a little bit confusing, and I tried to make it as simple as possible. And I think you're really better off talking to, one of these legal or tax professionals to get more information for yourself. But I wanted to introduce this as a topic, so when you get into those discussions, you go, oh yeah, I've heard about that. Now, if you want to start a company and operate a company in Illinois, you can contact your Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. That's what it's called in Illinois. And if you notice again, this is a live link. So if you click on this, which I'm not going to do now, it will go to your Illinois State Department of Commerce website. They provide a lot of assistance for businesses in Illinois. If any of you are from outside, I know it's not unlikely, or it's not improbable that you could be from nearby Indiana. You'll have to speak to that appropriate department. And they have people that you can talk to that can guide you. They help you get started. They do provide Business in Illinois handbook, which is what this picture is about starting a business. And again, this word handbook and this picture, the same link gets you to the handbook. And they have publications and guides. So it's a great place to get introduced to how to start a business in Illinois. And this is part of the program that I do tweak depending on which state that I'm giving the program. I've given it several states already and tweaked it accordingly. If you do want to form an LLC in Illinois, the registration fee is $150 to start. And each year you renew it, and it's $75 a year. I don't really know what they do for this, for the renewal, the $75 a year. It's the same sort of thing in New Jersey. I think I pay $80 a year to renew. And all it does is it keeps me in their registry. That's the best I can tell. So they don't delete me. So I guess it's a revenue stream. Not big money, but being a consultant, it is tax deductible. So that's helpful.
Hey, Stacy, just a word to the wise. I'm in Minnesota, and I have an LLC that we created like 18 months ago. And to renew it, there was something that came in the mail that looked like it was official and from the state of Minnesota, and it was not. And they wanted to charge me a fee, like a big fee, to renew my LLC. And thank God my husband's been a sole proprietor for a long time. And so he sniffed it out. And he's like, no, this is, BS. And then sure enough, we went on to like the actual state of Minnesota website.
Yep.
And it was free.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, it's free to renew in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you don't even
just
pay.
beware of things you get in the mail that may look official to renew, but may not actually be from the government, from the state.
I've gotten that too. And where they'll basically say, please make sure, a friendly reminder that your renewal doesn't expire. We'll take care of it. They don't charge $1 million, but they may charge $200 or $300 for something that you can do on your own.
Yeah.
In New Jersey, the renewal is online. And when I pay with a credit card, is a convenience fee. So I probably pay another $5 more, not big money, but nothing near what they're going to charge, assuming they're even legitimate as a service to try and help me.
Right.
They could also try.
I'm sorry, I would echo what Stacy said, that actually there's several things that you get, especially HR, those the posters and everything that are in the break room. There's companies that tell you absolutely it looks very official, you need to do this, but you always got to read everything you get when you set up a company, because I'll guarantee 50% of it is bogus and they're stealing your money. So
yeah, that stuff you can download often from in your case, your state commerce or treasury department website. You can get those standard signs. My break room, it's me, right? So what is it? It's either my kitchen or my bathroom. Those are my break rooms when I'm working from home. So I don't need those things. Nobody's knocking on my door looking for the sign that I'm obligated to put out for employees. I don't have employees. But yeah, you know what? The reason why that works for these companies is your registry is part of the public domain. Think about it. If you're trying to start a business, you're going to create a name, ABC company, and you're going to look to make sure that your company has a unique name. In almost all the states, that's a requirement. You cannot register a company that's already registered with that name. So that information is public domain. And so what they do is they go look in the public domain for companies, and they send out millions of these cards, or however many they do, and they'll get a few people who send them the money. It's the snail mail equivalent to phishing. Yep, so be careful. So as a consultant, how much should I charge? And this is always a fun question. You charge market rate. So a vague enough answer. And so, but the market rate is what the average price a customer will pay for your type of consulting area, for your type, well, for your community or your municipality. There's a possibility that being in the greater Chicago area, you might pay more than, or charge more than maybe where Stacy is in Minnesota. I'm making an assumption. I don't know that that's the case, but bigger cities tend to be, although Minnesota certainly has big cities, so it depends. I can tell you, I'm geographically between Philadelphia and New York City. Being in central New Jersey, my rate is less than if I was working directly in New York City. And so I charge accordingly. But you kind of think of it this way. If a consultant like you might typically receive $100 an hour for your type of service, the market rate is probably between, guesstimating, $80 to $100, $120 an hour. Why a variance? Well, some people have more experience or less experience. Some people may have a very specific type of experience within that industry. So it could be flexible. When I first started out, my rate was below market rate. I wanted to secure a couple of customers who then could be advocates for me, could have a testimonial. So, the rate was fair, but it was very fair, but not what I knew I could charge. So my rate's gone up over the years. And what's funny is, I'm not a good business person. For anybody that I've kept since the beginning, and I have one client still who was my second client, I still charge them the same low rate when they negotiate with me. New rates are for new clients. So I'm just very thankful that they took a chance with me, and I'm happy to be a supporter. On the other hand, that's why I'm still working.
David, may I ask two
Sure.
questions on that?
Yeah.
So I'm in the tax area and I'm thinking of doing a contract role, and it's through, one of the big firms, nationwide type firms. So really two questions. It'd be a long-term role. What's really market? Do I peg it off, let's say, what a full-time salary would be for that role? Because I don't have any idea of what a consultant in that area would make. And then you touched on this earlier. What sort of cut would you think that the nationwide staffing firm would be taking? Because that, I'm assuming, ultimately impacts what I get paid too.
I'll answer the second one first, just it's easier. Some of the big consulting companies will take 50% or more of the rate. So if they're paying you $100 an hour, it wouldn't surprise me if they're charging $150 to $200 an hour to the end client. And what the end client is happy with is they get the peace of mind of working with a big, reliable consulting company, and they're doing all the homework to find ultimately you. So they're entitled to make a percentage. What is the market rate? I can tell you the exact market rate for your job in your area. I have no idea what it is. You have to do that research. You can look on glassdoor.com, salary.com, some of those websites to see what might be typical, and then compare it to the specification in the job rec and your level of skill. If you want to get an idea of what a market rate could be, this is exactly the way I would start out by doing it, which is figure out what your annual salary, based on your annual salary, what you are actually paid per hour, or think about what your annual salary that you should be making, in your sort of full-time job. So I took this number, $85,000. I divide by 52 weeks, 40 hours per week. You could argue 35 hours a week, 37 and a half hours a week. And I came up with $40.87 an hour. So if you charge someone $40.87 an hour, assuming no other expenses, you'll get $85,000. But that's not likely to be market salary for a consultant. You have to consider other costs as well that you may have. What are your benefits that you would be expecting? What about your administrative time? Maybe you're putting an extra 10 or 20 hours a month in that. You want to cover any of your personal time off. There may be other things that you should be expecting as well. And then that will increase your hourly rate, and you'll get more of a sense of, are you at least covering your nut?
Yeah.
But you have to do the homework, because you may say, I could survive on $120,000. But what if a consultant in your area typically gets $150,000? So do that homework.
Yeah. Yeah, in my case, I think what's going on is, again, since I'm through this big firm, I know what the role is kind of ahead of tax, generally what they pay, and their rate probably does match that. But again, then when they take the 30, 40, 50% cut, then the salary ends up being less, if that makes.
If they're hiring you, and you're going to be in a W-2, the
Yeah,
likelihood is
W2.
you'll probably get a little bit closer to an employee rate than you will as purely an independent consultant.
Yeah.
Because they're taking care of a lot of the administrative stuff.
Yeah,
If you're going to be on a 1099, you should bump that up.
yeah, but again, they have to get their cut though, so if they're taking.
They'll
30,
get
40,
it anyway. But the thing is, on a 1099, same consulting company.
Yeah,
So if they're going to say, well, we're going to pay you $100 an hour on a W-2, we'll pay you $120 on a 1099.
Yeah.
Same company, same work. So
yeah, that's helpful, thank
you
you.
have to see. But again, look at this. You want to know where you could check. This is a link that I found on founder.com. It's a live link. You'll be able to check it later. And this gives you some more advice on how to set your own rate. So if you want to take a screenshot, fine. Otherwise, download the presentation a little later. Okay. So about errors and omissions insurance. Let's talk a little about that, because earlier I said you have legally a limited liability, but ultimately none. But what is this errors and omissions insurance? It's a type of liability, professional liability insurance that protects your companies, their workers, other professionals against claims of inadequate work or any negligent action. The negligent action could be an accident. You're a finance person, you're doing some corporate filings, you made a mistake, and the company is on the lam for thousands of dollars for your mistake. So they'll want a remedy from you, possibly. Why? Well, who gets sued? In America, we all get sued. Everybody involved gets sued for anything. So the company, your LLC or your Inc. gets sued, and the workers that you put on the contract, which could be you if it's you doing the work for the LLC. So there could be a lot of people getting cited. Do I need errors and omissions insurance? Well, it depends on your tolerance for risk and what your risk involvement is. If you're doing financial reporting and can make a mathematical mistake, you might say the involvement of risk is high. Do you have a very big bank account? You might say your tolerance is low. Or your tolerance is high, rather. You can afford it if you get it, so you won't get it. So you have to decide what makes sense for you. I also cannot tell you what errors and omissions insurance cost, because each type of job has a different rate. And it also depends on how much you're going to cover yourself. Will you cover yourself for 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million? Sometimes the employer or the company bringing you on board will say, we want to make sure you have $1 million of errors and omissions insurance. If you've ever run a department or a company, you might have even required that of any of the vendors you worked with, even the company putting in your copy machines. You want to make sure that in case they break something at your company. So you're just putting it in an analogy for you that it may need to be there. The other types of insurance you need to think about are riders on your existing personal insurance. I'll give you an example. Let's say you do your work from your home office. It's a bedroom in the house. It's not otherwise being used, and it's set up and you're working there nicely. And then you contact an office supply company to send you new toner cartridge and paper for your printer. And it's your business printer. And so a day or two later, the company sends UPS a package, sends you a package through UPS. And while the UPS delivery person is there, they trip on your front step, they fall down and they break their leg. You may say, no problem, my homeowner's insurance covers this. Until your homeowner's insurance finds out that you have a home office and that wasn't covered under your homeowner's insurance. So you may need to speak with your other insurance companies. Your auto insurance, the same thing. What if you're driving to visit clients and you get into a fender bender? You may need to talk to your auto insurance. Is business functions covered under my auto insurance? So just be aware of that. And then you'll add those costs into your rate. You'll make that up as well. So it's part of your expense.
David?
Yep.
This Ron Tinsley. I can share with the group, I did some consulting work in the state of Texas. And if you work as a 1099 contractor in Texas, you're actually required to have a minimum of $250,000 of aerosol emissions.
Okay.
So
Yep.
You might want to check the state requirements of the states that you're working in. I had it regardless, I was going to buy it regardless, but I knew that I was required under the state regs to have it. So it was a nominal amount, it was less than what I bought, but I thought I would share that.
Well, thank you very much. Every state is different. I try to do a little homework as I do this program, state to state. Other programs I do are not state specific. So thank you very much. Yeah. Also, even like if Texas says that they require everyone to have it, also certain businesses are required when they register. A lot of times, like home contracting type businesses tend to require as part of your registration with the state that you have it as well. So you do need to look in. But if you're not sure, there's a little note right at the bottom of the screen. Consult your legal and insurance professionals. Remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an insurance person. I'm not a banker. Not a finance person. So you will need to speak with people in those professions to help you specifically. But thank you, Ron. Yep. Oops, let's move on. This is my favorite little subtopic. Do I need to collect sales tax? The reason why this is my favorite topic is when I asked this question to myself, I found out in New Jersey that they had a seminar. And so I attended the seminar. And the questions, the answers to all their questions are, well, it depends, go look it up, that kind of thing. Do I collect? So in Illinois, and you have to check if you're in Texas or if you're in Minnesota, specifically for your state, basically taxable products and services, you do need to collect sales tax. I don't know if professional services, I'm assuming many of you are offering professional services, do require you to collect and submit sales tax. In New Jersey, for the type of IT work I do, I don't need to collect sales tax. If I was reselling computer supplies, I would need to collect sales and use tax potentially. In Illinois, they have state and local taxes, and they're sales and use taxes. They call it general merchandise, and they also say items to be titled, like vehicles and boats and such. There are certain foods and drugs and medical appliances that are subject to tax and some that are excluded from tax. Illinois does seem to be one of the states that does have a wider variety and range of items that are subject to sales and use tax. So you do need to look into it for yourself. You generally file quarterly, unless the amount is very high of the tax that you collect. And I couldn't find the amount. I always was looking quickly. In New Jersey, for instance, it's $20,000 a month of sales tax. If you collect that much, you file monthly. So you do have to find out specifically for Illinois. And why I chuckled in New Jersey's answer was a little different. Products are taxable unless we say they're not. And services are not taxable unless we say they are. So that's what their answer was. And they left it up to me to go find. And then they referred me to a website that had hundreds of documents, and I found the one that was right for me. Another live link. So this is your Treasury Department's website, your tax department's website in Illinois. Texas, I'm sure has one. Minnesota, I'm sure has one. So do check accordingly. This is a live link. So if you get the download, you can click on it and you can begin the search here as well. So I can tell you, for me personally, only one time did I resell some product to the end user, and I was required to collect and report the sales tax. I do file a quarterly sales tax return, takes me 5 minutes online, and every quarter I report 0, so it doesn't cost me anything. But I am obligated, because I'm eligible to collect, I'm obligated to report. What if I need health insurance? I'm a consultant. I'm not a full-time employee. I don't have that benefit. What if I need health insurance? What are my options? Well, what medical insurance typically does is it pays for medical, surgical, or other healthcare expenses. And what expenses it pays depending on the type of policy that you have. If you're self-employed, you can actually go out to an insurance company and buy private insurance. It's not as common any longer because of the Affordable Care Act, which we'll talk about in just a second, but that's an option for you. Call up your favorite insurance company, see if they'll sell you something. It also tends not to be the cheapest option. It can be pretty expensive, but it can give you the exact coverage that you're looking for. You may be able to join a group and get a group plan through one of the professional associations that are in Illinois. A lot of states have professional associations. New Jersey has the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. It's kind of like a chamber of commerce, but it's not a chamber of commerce. It's membership driven, similar to a chamber. And their members get all sorts of benefits that they offer. So you could look for that as well. And look for your own industry, see if they have associations as well. There's the healthcare exchange. It's called the Affordable Care Act. It used to be called Obamacare. I think we've moved enough presidents past Obama not to call Obamacare any longer. In Illinois, you don't use the healthcare exchange directly any longer. You use it through the Illinois website called Get Covered Illinois. I don't know about Minnesota. I don't know about Texas. If your state does not have its own exchange website, then you use healthcare.gov. Now, it doesn't matter which website you use. If you're in a state that has its own exchange, or you're on healthcare.gov because your state doesn't have an exchange, it's still managed or guided by the Affordable Care Act. And so the insurance companies that have decided to do business in your state either manage through healthcare.gov or Get Covered Illinois. So kind of a rule of thumb, if you live in a blue state or a state that's maybe purple, you likely have a state exchange. If you live in a very red state, you likely don't for political reasons. There's no obligation for a state to have its own exchange. Medicare, if you are 65 years or older, you actually must apply for Medicare, or it's very strongly advised, and also consider looking and getting a supplemental plan, Medicare Advantage or any of those sorts of things. Medicare doesn't cover everything, but the supplements fill the gaps. Now, if you're 65 and older and you have a spouse at home or children at home that are under 65, they are not eligible for Medicare, only when you reach 65. So they may still need to get covered in one of these other ways. And if you're recently off-hired from your organization, you're covered by what's called COBRA, which basically means your company must be able to make healthcare insurance available to you. You're paying basically the group rate from your company. It's not always the cheapest option, but you get the insurance you used to have. There's usually a limit, I believe it's 18 months. And your premiums, unlike buying it on your own, your premiums may not be a tax deduction because your former company probably is taking the premium as a tax deduction. So it's an out-of-pocket expense, it's not a tax deduction. So you have to see what makes the most sense for you to go on COBRA or get insurance on your own. Again, speak with an insurance professional or tax professional for more information. Up our second intermission, and then we'll get into the home stretch. Let's see, anything in the chat? A lot of hellos, how are yous? Hello, how are you? Add the cost, good comment. Any other information or questions or thoughts or comments?
It's Stacy. I'll just say on Cobra, I was at Wells Fargo for a very long time. And I then went on to Cobra after that, and oh my God, it was like drastic change in premiums where you get to see how much these employers supplement or cover on your behalf in terms of premiums. And I mean, I maybe went from a few $100s a month to like $1,900 a month. It was ridiculous. And a major expense. So,
What you'll also find on the healthcare, my thought is if you become unemployed, take the COBRA because you don't want the gap, but immediately start looking for an alternative that may
Right.
be. So maybe you'll pay 1 month on COBRA. If you're given enough lead time, if the company says we're closing the division in 2 months, you could do your shopping ahead of time. When you look at the Affordable Care Act, it's basically a giant group plan, and they have 3 or 4 levels. So sometimes you can pay a higher premium and have a lower copay, or the opposite around. If you're very healthy, you probably say, I'd rather have a lower premium and have a higher copay because I won't go to the doctor. If you have more healthcare expenses, you flip it around. So they have usually 3 or 4 levels. And then there are discounts that are given based on your income level. So if you get unemployed in January and think you're going to be out for 11 months, you'll take the biggest discount. Now, if you take that big discount and you land a job after a month with healthcare insurance, you owe that discount back to the government when you file your taxes. But then think about it as, well, what's the big deal? You're getting a salary now. You're being reimbursed anyway. So it was available to you. You have to pay some of it back. But yeah, look at the healthcare exchange. It is very robust, very flexible. It may give you some good options.
Yeah,
Each
and
state,
that's what we ultimately did. We moved off of COBRA and onto the healthcare exchange in Minnesota, and Minnesota is one of those states that offers their own exchange. Just to your point that what you said is, it's a blue state.
and that's
So,
fine. And I'm not trying to make
No,
a
I
little
agree.
tongue-in-cheek political discussion, but people will ask, how do I know if my state had, and that was the only reason. I'm not trying to have a political discussion here at all.
Oh, no,
But that's just typically the way, but it's the same Affordable Care Act. It's just who's administering it, which agency is administering it.
Yep.
And I don't know what the benefits are to the state. They're probably getting some reimbursement from the federal government for doing the administration, and they made a case in their own administration to be able to do that. Yep. But Affordable Care Act is not insurance. It's guidelines for insurance. The insurance companies provide the insurance. So it's not socialized insurance or that kind of thing. You'll contact whoever the providers are in your state and compare plans and see what makes sense for you.
Yep.
David, going
Yep.
back way back to the beginning of your presentation, which has been outstanding, by the way.
Thank you.
You talked about, excuse me, you talked about establishing a market rate, or at least doing some research to determine what a market rate for your services. And of course, that's that is, from your perspective, that's your gross, right?
Yep.
And now we've discussed or have brought into the picture all of these things which will qualify as deductible expenses. But indeed, you need to do some very careful thinking because your net may be negative. In other words, you can impose your health insurance, as costly as it may be, to affect your market rate, because what you're doing is you're pricing yourself. If you're attempting to recover a high medical rate in your billing rate, you're pricing yourself out of the market. That's my point.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, but I think for most people, and I can't speak for you or anybody else on the call, if you think back to the calculation I did earlier about what the market rate is, you take your annual salary of 85,000 and you divide it about, figure out the hourly rate comes to $47 and change. That's not a high hourly rate for a typical consultant. So let's say a more reasonable rate was $85 an hour or $95 an hour, $90 an hour. You're now doubling your annual gross. So there's a good chance most of your expenses will be comfortably covered. But again, you need to speak to your accountant and your business law attorney to see what makes sense for you. But you're right. That's why you need to consider what those costs are. And it would be unfair to tell someone, well, the reason why I'm a bookkeeper who charges $100 an hour when every other bookkeeper charges $50 an hour is because I have high medical insurance.
Right,
You can't make
exactly.
that case.
Right.
But I think for most people, the math works. Yep, but you're right. You got to consider all that. Thank you. All right, we will move on.
I'll
Oh.
I had one other question or really comment. So
Sure.
I'd spoken with some people who were consultants as fractional CFOs, and one of the things one of them had said was that he knows that typically a contract, a gig, lasts for 6 months, 4 to 6 months generally, and then there can be a lull for 2, 3, 4 months when there is nothing. And so what he does is he builds that into his pricing too. And so that at the end of the year, if he gets 2 or 3 gigs that cover 8 months of the year or 9 months, that he's still able to sustain. And he had been a gig worker for working as a fractional CFO on his own for like years, many years. So clearly he was making it work and able to, take care of his family and everything. So just another point of view on that.
Another observation. Right. And probably when, he had his first client, to Jerry's point, he probably wasn't covering his nut. And think about it. If you start a business, depending on the nature of the business, there may be a capital expense that you have to make. Do you have to buy a new computer? Do you have to, buy shelving for your office or your office for, whatever, office furniture? So you may have some upfront costs. As an IT person working on my computer, I didn't have a lot of upfront costs. Business cards, right? You got to buy business, and there's some upfront costs. With fractional C-level people, what they tend to do is have a large number of clients, and they may work a few hours a year for each of them. And so not much different than maybe your tax accountant who has lots of clients and they get swamped for 3 months out of the year, and then maybe help with financial planning and other things through the year. And they work on a volume business. So, fractional C-level people might work on that kind of model. If you're a person that is looking for one of those long-term single employer contracts, it's a different billing model. Yep. But yeah, I think for most cases, as long as you can generate a sufficient reasonable revenue, the math works, even if you do have some upfront expenses. And in terms of capital expenses, you need to speak with your accountant about the best way to manage that as well. Maybe some things get depreciated or deducted over time. I don't know the proper ways of doing those. Speak to your accountant to see what makes sense for that as well. Okay, lively group. Let us move on. Okay, so we talked about why to be a consultant and pros and cons and some of the things you may need to do. But the bottom line is, so now that I'm willing to do all those things, so how do I become a consultant? If we were in a room together, and I used to do this before COVID in a room together, I'd say, repeat after me. You don't have to repeat after me if you don't want to. I am a consultant. That is how you become a consultant. And it's usually that time that I make the sign of the cross or sprinkle holy water on people or do something that gives them peace of mind that they've been appropriately anointed and ordained as a consultant. But it's really just that simple. You say, I'm a consultant, and you are a consultant. You can hang a shingle digitally or in person if you want. You want to identify the niche where you really have knowledge, where you really have an experience and expertise, because as a consultant, you are being hired as an expert. As an employee, they're willing to train you on some things that you don't yet know. But as a consultant, you really need to come in hitting the ground running. So you also need to identify where you have support. When you are employed by someone and there's something in the office you don't know, you find a coworker, your boss, someone in another department, somebody. How do I do this? When you're on your own, you have to find your own support mechanism as well. Fortunately, Google has a lot of answers. YouTube has a lot of answers. Industry journals do. So you can do that. Just be aware of what that is. And then choose and research your target market, because typically as a consultant, people don't look to hire generalists. They look to hire experts. So that you'll say, I'm an accountant, I can work in any industry. Well, probably. I mean, math is math. But a lot of times they'll say, we're interested in accountants in our logistics industry. So see what industry you want to target. For me, I tend to target not-for-profit organizations and small businesses. That's what I target. I've only had 2 big clients, and they were referrals to me. I didn't go after them. One was a big transportation company, and one was a bank that got referred to me, which I wouldn't have gone after on my own. Then begin to alert your professional network and manage your network. Begin to contact them. It could be all the professionals you have on LinkedIn, people that coworkers and stuff that you used to know and work with. Make sure you inform your accountant, your lawyer, anybody else that provides those sort of professional services to you, and get them all, working for you and with you to get you on board. With your professional network, you may want to let them know, I'm a consultant, start referring me. I'm oversimplifying it. You'll have to manage that relationship, but you'll want to get them working for you that way. You will also need to develop a business plan. Now, it doesn't need to be as complex and scary as it sounds. In my mind, there are 2 types of business plans. One is very big and robust. It might be a 3-inch loose leaf binder filled with different sections to talk about what your target market is going to be, how you're going to start looking for funds, what your budget is going to be, what's your 5-year plan, all sorts of things. The other could be a sheet of paper that says, I'm this type of consultant, this is my client base, and this is who I'm going to target. Why would you have a little one instead of a big one? You need the big one if you're going to go to the bank and ask for money, if you're going to go to venture capitalists and ask for money, if you're going to look for investors. They're not going to look to invest in you and loan you money if you don't have a very well thought out plan. The smaller kind is much like what I have, and it's on a sheet of paper in a file cabinet over there, that basically says, I'm going to go after not-for-profit type companies, small businesses, solopreneurs, those sorts of things. And every once in a while, if it's like drifting away from it, I'll go look and say, oh, that's why I can't get a business at big banks. That's not my target market. So it just kind of reminds you of what it is you're going to do. But make sure you have it written down. Don't just keep it in your head. Now that you are a consultant, here are some other things you need to do. You need to name and create your company. Now, again, you don't have to form an LLC and register with your state, but I think it's a good idea to do so. It's not terribly expensive. At the very least, registering with the state does protect your name. For instance, in New Jersey, nobody else can be Princeton Technology Advisors. Because I'm registered, I'm the only one. Also, register your web address as soon as possible. You can create a website later, but as soon as possible, register that web address. So as you're thinking up creative names for your company, also look to see if the web address is used. The easiest way to see if a web address is used is type it into the address bar. If it says there's no website, you probably can use it. If a company comes up, you can't use it. And what you do is probably the same day or before that you contact the state and register and start the process for becoming an LLC or a corp, that same day, go out to one of the registrar's company and register your web address. The cost is $10 to $20 a year. It's not big money. You can use someone like GoDaddy or Google or HostGator or any of those web companies. And if you need any other questions or guidance, I'll help you with that. My charge to help is only a cup of coffee. I don't know how you're going to get me a cup of coffee from Chicago, but we'll figure that out. But I'll be happy to answer the question to help you get registered. Here's why. It happened to 2 prospects that reached out to me to help them with a website. They wanted me also to help them secure their web address. They said, this is what my web address is going to be based on my company name. And what we found in 2 cases was that the web address was already registered within a week or so of them registering their company name. So somebody squatted on it. This is a company that hoped that this person was going to contact them and say, well, I know the web address is only worth $20. How much do you want from it? They're squatters. They're looking to resell it. That is not illegal. It is illegal if your company is trademarked. So you can't go out and get Coca-Cola for yourself. Coca-Cola has the trademark right to it, but most company names are not trademarked. So just go out and get it right away. If you're thinking about it, send me an email, call me up. My contact information's at the end. I'll be happy to talk you through it. Develop your professional support network. Remember, you don't have a boss or coworkers any longer. So make sure you know who it is you need to contact or what services you need to contact if you need any support for something that you're helping your client do. Acquire any needed licensing or certificates. And this really is on 2 levels. Some states do require licensing for certain professions. Find out if yours does. The other is some employers expect you to be having certain certificates. For instance, if you're going to be a project manager, they may kind of expect you to be PMP certified. If you're going to be a public accountant, they may want you to have a CPA and so forth. They're not required by the state, but your clients expect it. So look into those, find the ones that you need or would be beneficial for you. And don't do this alone. There's plenty of places you can get advice. Obviously, your accountant, your lawyer, you may have to pay them a fee. You might have colleagues, friends, coworkers. They'll help you. Look for SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers, any of these public organizations that do help people get started. Great places to get advice. When I was looking to get started, I contacted SCORE. I got a free mentor. It was very helpful for me. And update your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is going to have a current position that says, I am a consultant. So you'll add that as well. So that people see, it validates just what you are, because when people hear about you, they'll look you up online. They'll see that on your LinkedIn profile. Some ways to generate business. Find business networking groups. BNI, LATIP, there are others that are out there. These are national organizations with local chapters. A city like Chicago probably has dozens of BNIs and dozens of LATIPs. These generally are professional associations of like-minded people who in each group, there's only one person of that profession. So you kind of have a referral network. So look at those. Join meetup.com. Meetup.com is not the world's largest dating website. Well, there are probably singles groups as well, but this is a website, a social media site that has groups, a way of promoting groups, and these groups often meet in person, especially now that with COVID mostly behind us. It's free. Meetup is completely free. The people that pay for Meetup are the ones who create the groups. Members are free. Now, the groups themselves may have their own membership, but the membership in meetup.com is free. Join LinkedIn groups. LinkedIn groups are similar to meetup.com, are great ways to meet people that are similar to you. Join groups of your industry. Join groups of your prospects. Because if you're an accountant and you join accountant groups, well, you'll meet other accountants. They're all your competition. But if you're an accountant in the pharmaceutical industry, join pharmaceutical groups. That's where you might meet clients. Attend professional associations, attend conferences, again, within your profession and within your industry that you're targeting to do work. And keep your network active, alert them, maybe send out emails once in a while or tweets once in a while. And be active on social media. People will begin to accept you more readily, trust you more readily when they see that you're active on social media, because they're probably Googling you after they hear about you. You know this to be true because you Google people that you first hear about. Maybe someone referred a plumber to you. You might Google them to make sure that they do the work that you need. So then you're going to be Googled too. So be active on social media. I cannot tell you the right platform to be on. You're going to have to figure out the right platform for your audience. And I do a separate social media program about audience. Oh, there we go. Now that you've got clients, you want to build loyalty in your clients. You want to interact with them in a very personal / professional way. Get to know your clients, understand their challenges, what their goals are, because you're going to need to provide solutions for your clients based on their needs. Find out what projects they may need help with. Offer to support. If you can do something cheap or for free, do it. I mean, kind of similar, I said to you, I'm an IT guy. If you need help finding how to get your domain, I'll charge you a cup of coffee. And really remotely, I won't charge you a cup of coffee. But that's what I do. It's some things that I give for clients or prospects to build trust. So if they don't tell you, tell them that what you're open to working on more projects. Just let them know. Thank you for the opportunity to work for you before. I'm happy to speak with you about whatever your future needs are. Never overpromise and underdeliver. Tell them, let them tell you what they need. Tell them if you can do it, and if you can, deliver on it. This really validates you as for building trust, for showing you as a reliable, loyal partner. And if you can, get testimonials. How do you do that? Ask them, can you give me a testimonial? It could be posted on Google, it could be posted on LinkedIn, wherever you need testimonials. If they write you a testimonial, put it on your website. I have some testimonials on my website. Where can you find gigs? Where can you find these things? Well, there are a bunch of websites. I'm going to give you a few to look for, and you'll see the blue links are live. So one is called FlexJobs. And if you want to go to FlexJobs, later download the program and you can go to flexjobs.com. And they tend to offer and list part-time and freelance jobs. They're membership driven. So I don't remember if they have a free time period like 30 days. I just don't remember if they do. But if they do, try them out for 30 days and see if they have the types of clients and jobs that you would be interested in offering and finding. Freelancer, another good website for finding remote jobs that may be offered as contracts or hourly gigs, may be a good place to get started. Another one called Solid Gigs. For some reason, the high profile type companies and premium positions tend to show up here. I don't know why that is. Maybe because their name is Solid Gigs, I don't know. But another one, again, a live link. You can just highlight it and click on it. And really any of the job boards, Monster, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, Simply Hired, all those have, and LinkedIn, of course, all have contract positions that may be available. So take a look there. Of course, in your professional networking, you'll be able to find opportunities as well. So, home stretch, we're wrapping up. Oops, let's go there. So consulting is an alternative to permanent employment. It may be the alternative for you. There are pros and cons, but some of the pros, it's a resume gap filler. Could be very important. You'll develop a variety of experience, make your resume more robust in a way that you may not have been able to as an employee. And you may get paid more because consulting rates do tend to be higher than employed rates. It may lead to getting hired as well, convert to a consultant. You don't need to become an LLC or a business, but you can. And then you declare, I am a consultant, and get yourself started. Okay, so that was our program. A few people did have to leave early, but glad you folks stuck around. Any other questions? And by the way, here is where you can download the slide deck. My website is princetontechadvisors.com, princetontechadvisors.com. Now, I will tell you right now on my website, there are not red arrows. Just on this picture are red arrows. So click on the workshops tab and recently offered programs, and this is the one that's going to be on the top. until next week when I have another presentation, and that one will be above it. If the FENG group gives me the link to download this slide deck, I don't know that you can or can't. I know that I'm sure they'll send it out to all of us, but if I can download it, I will also put the link there as well for you to download or watch the presentation again. So any questions? There's my contact information, but any questions? I'm hanging around till we wrap up. Going once, going twice. You know, it was certainly nice that you were asking questions during the program, and which I think just made a lot more sense to do it that way than to wait till everything at the end. So there's certainly a lot of information here, and this was really meant to introduce you to a lot of these topics to show you that this is not insurmountable. All this stuff is easy. You may need a little bit of guidance and help from a few other people, but I suspect you will want to talk to maybe an attorney, business law attorney, or a paralegal. There are companies like LegalZoom and others that offer, let's see, the company corporation is another that can form your LLC. Speak to your accountant, you know, make sure that you get the information that's right for you personally in your situation. But I'm hopeful that at the very least, what this program did for you is as you speak with other people, now you could say you've heard that before, and you could put it in the context of what they're telling you. Minimize any confusion or surprises. This was a starting point, not a be-all, end-all.
This was really very helpful, David, and it covered so many different aspects. It did really provide that framework for us to go and look at this in a more informed way.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that's the case.
Thank you. And
Well,
thank you for
very much.
providing the presentation. Yeah,
You're very
we'll,
welcome. I appreciate
download
the
it.
opportunity. And again, you can download the slide deck later if you want. It's there now. You're welcome to it, and wish you all lots of luck.
Thank
you.
We'll reach out to Joyce and have her send the link to all attendees. And I just jotted down your contact, your website and email, so I will get it that way. But thank you so much, David. Your present, you hit it out of the park.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, great presentation.
Nice reference, since we were talking about the Cubs and Mets earlier.
Well, we'll forget about that part.
Okay.
David, I got a question here, Mehdi.
Sure.
Mehdi here, if that's
Hi.
okay.
Yeah,
A little bit different angle to consult in, but I have been interviewing with this company. I had about 4 different interviews, and on Monday I got a call back from the recruiter saying that they're going to be pushing the position till Q2. So maybe I have to wait a couple of months before they pull the trigger on it. And they give me the excuse that they're waiting on onboarding a couple of senior folks, and they wanted to get their opinion before they finalize the recruiting process. And I was advised by a friend to see if I can negotiate some sort of a consulting arrangement, either on a temp basis. So instead of just waiting a couple of months, and obviously the position would just slip away, maybe see if I can negotiate some sort of a consulting arrangement or a term. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
so one of the people very active in FENG is a gentleman named Marty Latman, some of you may know.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say it depends.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. And the reason why is if they're really waiting, if you take them at their word, the project may be suspended as well. So there's no contract to be had because they're not doing the work. I don't know. If you think that's not the case, you could offer it to them. You can tell them, you know, I'm available if that would be helpful to you, and just put it out there. And I think you have nothing to lose if you have a good, comfortable relationship. Are you going through an external recruiter or an internal recruiter?
Internal.
Okay, so you may want to, thank them for the information and let them know if it'll be helpful and expedite the process long-term. You're willing to come on as a contractor, see what they say. Couldn't hurt. Just
And-
make sure you don't come across as desperate because they won't want to hire
Yeah,
you.
that's my only concern. It's two things. One is you may sound desperate, but two, you're also kind of killing any chance of negotiating power that you may have eventually. And they may actually end up maybe pulling the offer if there would ever be one, maybe a month down the road.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean,
only concern.
Another option would be, I would certainly, if you haven't done so already, make sure you thank the person for the information, let them know you remain interested. And you'll reach out from time to time just to see how it's going.
Right.
And then maybe on a monthly basis, you reach out, just hello, how's it going? I've been keeping you in my thoughts because of the information. Is there anything I can help you with? And just stay in forefront in their mind.
Got it.
But you never know whether or not there was a hidden agenda to begin with.
Right.
And that is, why did they reach out to I will call it the general public, of which you are a part?
Mhm.
Why did they reach out to determine the degree of expertise that is perhaps available, in the quote marketplace, if you will, and compare that to what candidates do they have internally? So you always have that kind of a situation that you need to protect yourself against. But I agree with David's assessment that you have nothing to lose.
Right.
To offer just what you said.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense, Jerry. Thank you.
I can tell
Yeah.
you, not exactly the same scenario. In August of 1999, I was job hunting. And I came in second place at a company I really thought was a great opportunity. It was manage an IT team, and they picked somebody else. And then let's see, about 2-3 months later, I landed another position with another company that was actually nearby this first company. So when I landed, I sent an email to the manager. Hey, I landed here. Just want to say hello. Maybe we could have lunch. And he wrote back a thank you. And so that's what happened. Well, what wound up happening, the company I landed with, for long story short, it wasn't the right fit. And after a couple months, I started job hunting again. I didn't reach out to that company right away, but they happened to reach out to me saying, we happen to have another manager position. So they contacted me directly, said, let's talk about it. The position could be yours. So because I kept a little bit of a arm's length relation with this fellow, he remembered me and he reached out to me. When these relationships, it's not about who you know. You could say, oh yeah, I know the hiring manager over at the ABC company, but does the hiring manager think of you? In this case, I let that manager, think of me when he had the next position. So yeah, keep the relationship going. Don't be pushy, be friendly, be professional.
Certainly.
Good luck.